I'm not surprised that people are already talking about an extension to the transition period. I am slightly surprised that they're talking about an extension before we've actually concluded the negotiations on the withdrawal agreement. I mean, it's been perfectly obvious, I think, to anyone watching this that the level of change that would be required in the British economy, the restructuring that would need to take place, the sheer amount of infrastructure that would need to be put in to accommodate something like a free trade agreement as opposed to what we have now is enormous, and 2 years is simply not enough time for that. So I'm surprised that it's come so early, but I'm not surprised at all at the idea that there should be an extension to the transition.
What does Theresa May have to do, in your mind, over the next 2 days to get things moving in the direction that she wants?
I think we have to stop talking to ourselves in the UK. I think we have to stop having a circular conversation with ourselves, reassuring ourselves that if we stay strong we can get what we want, and actually listen to what this place is saying and has been saying all along. Effectively, all we are doing is petitioning a club we are leaving for the benefits of membership of that club. Now, it's up to the club to decide what the price of those benefits will be, and we have completely failed to grasp that very simple point in these negotiations. So we have to stop talking to ourselves. We have to engage properly with the propositions that are being put forward by the European side and recognise that we are on the back foot in these negotiations. It's why ultimately Brexit is a terrible idea.
Donald Tusk coming into this summit saying that he sees the chances of a no-deal Brexit greater than ever before. Is that an assessment that you think is shared by other European leaders, by members of the European Parliament that you talk to in particular?
It is. There's a lot of people increasingly worried about this. My analysis is really that if we fudge this now, if we go forward with something that basically gets Theresa May over the line, delivers Brexit on the 29th of March, but doesn't solve the fundamental problems that we need to solve on the Irish border, on the future relationship, then basically that is a surer route to no deal than going and concluding these negotiations properly. That's my own analysis of this. But I do wonder how much of this is just theatrics. How much have they agreed on a technical level, and how much is this all posturing? I suppose we'll never know, but it seems to me that those fundamental questions are not being answered yet. And until you get resolve those, you're not going to get any deal that will stand the test of time.
Some people have said recently that the European sides here have a huge amount to lose as well, and that to essentially step back and say we're not prepared to accept the British position on this going into the next few months ahead of March 29th deadline, they will have to go back to their constituencies and say, well, we didn't get a deal, we got so close, there were a few technicalities we couldn't agree on, and that's not going to be very palatable for their voters. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Well, what we have to remember, of course, is nobody wanted Brexit, but they accept that that's a sovereign decision of the United Kingdom, or any member state, in fact, to leave. But if you look at what people in the EU 27, the electorates, are seeing, they're seeing a country that has inconsistent demands that don't make any sense. Basically, what the UK is trying to say is we want to leave the single market, we want to leave the customs union, but we want frictionless trade. It's not possible. The whole point of this place, of course, is that the structures that have been built up over many, many decades with British support and ideas, they are the things that facilitate that frictionless trade. If you leave the union, you can't have frictionless trade unless you follow the rules of the union, and that, of course, is the fundamental dilemma. And we've spent 2.5 years trying to dance around this fundamental inconsistency, and we, surprise, surprise, haven't resolved it.
Another big question, of course, is about whether this could get approved by the British Parliament, that the proposal that Theresa May has essentially still left on the table. We might see some tweaks to that, of course, tonight. But do you think that ultimately becomes the biggest challenge for her, is getting this not past the European counterparts, but actually through her own Parliament?
I think if a deal is on the table, I think it's very unlikely that you would get opposition certainly from the European Parliament, for example, which has to approve it in the end. So I agree with you. I think that the big problems for Theresa May, and indeed for all of us, lie in the Westminster Parliament, because understandably and rightly so, members of Parliament have to judge whatever comes from this process basically on two criteria. Does it, one, deliver for the United Kingdom in terms of our economy, and two, meet the promises that were made in the 2016 referendum? And those are the two criteria against which every single member of Parliament will have to judge what comes out of this process. And I think that the chances of the deal meeting those two criteria are next to none.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.